Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another nightly last 10 nights of Ramadan Quran reflection. Inshallah, today we're going to be looking at Surat al Alaq. It's also known as Surat al Iqra because that's what it starts with. But it is a Makki surah. So like we said, a Makki surah just means that it came down upon the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ before his hijrah, before his migration to Medina. So we're going to take a listen to the surah, and then inshallah we're going to read the translation and kind of dissect it like we usually do.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى إن إلى ربك الرجعى أرأيت الذي ينهى عبدا إذا صلى أرأيت إن كان على الهدى أو أمر بالتقوى أرأيت إن كذب وتولى ألم يعلم بأن الله يرى كلا لئن لم ينته لنسفعا بالناصية ناصية كاذبة خاطئة فليدع ناديه سندع الزبانية كلا لا تطعه واسجد واقترب.
Okay, so taking a look at the translation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, read in the name of your Lord, that Lord who created. He created mankind from a clot. Read whilst your Lord is the most honorable, or like you could also say most honorable, most high, most noble. That Lord who taught with the pen. He taught mankind that which they did not know from before. Definitely, without a doubt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught mankind. Verily, the human beings are those who transgress. They feel as if they have become self-sufficient. Indeed, to your Lord is your return. Have you seen the one who prevents or prohibits a servant when he prays? Let me know, have you seen? What if he was upon guidance, or he was one who commands upon consciousness? Tell me if he believes and disbelieves and transgresses. Do they not know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees? Stay away from this. If he does not stop, we will drag him by his forelocks, which is lying and sinning. Let him call his associates. We shall call our associates. Okay. Oh, sorry. One more. Don't disobey him and prostrate and draw near. So honestly, I feel like when I'm reading this, probably most of you guys are like, what even is that? So we're going to dissect it. We're going to dive deeper into it. So we're going to break this like we usually do into 3 parts. So the first part, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's saying the famous verses that I think a lot of people know, which is Iqra. So it's like Iqra بِرَبِّكَ الَّذِي بِسْمِ رَبِّكَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَلَقٍ اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. So that first part. So what we get from that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these are the first 5 verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala initially revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in cave Hira. So this is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first sent upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, making him into a prophet. So it was these verses that Jibreel came down upon, and he was telling the Prophet Iqra, and he said, Ma ana biqari', like I can't read. And he kept on telling him, read in the name of your Lord. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught mankind that which they did not know. So it was these verses that actually made the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam a prophet. And then just a little fun fact, there's actually another surah that was revealed to the Prophet about like a little bit after this. It was the second revelation that he revealed, which was the beginning verses of Surat al because we know after he got the revelation, he ran home back to Khadija and he said, Dathiruni, Dathiruni, Zammiluni, Zammiluni, because he was scared. So he told him to he was telling them to cover him up. And it was that second revelation from the beginning of Surat al where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuhal muddathir, O you who is wrapped up, qum fa'andir, get up and like portray the message. So that was what made him a messenger. These 5 verses from Surat al Alaq was actually what made the Prophet Muhammad a prophet. Just a small benefit, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here says, He taught mankind that which they did not know from before. Definitely, without a doubt, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught mankind. So that one's pretty straightforward, just understanding that everything that we know in this world, any knowledge that we have, it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's taught it. So even stuff that we're taught indirectly from like people, it's just good to keep in mind that essentially all of this knowledge comes back from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like even knowledge that might be bad. For example, we know that black magic is something that's bad. Like we're not supposed to be doing magic. It's actually one of the 10 nullifiers of Islam. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in, I think it's Surat al He says that He sent the 2 angels, and He taught through these angels, they taught the people black magic. So it just shows you all knowledge, even if it might be something that's negative, was from Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran that these 2 angels came down to teach people the black magic, but they told them before they learned, don't learn it. So it's like a difference, but just understand that essentially all knowledge comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second part is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that verily the human beings are those who transgress. They feel as if they have become self-sufficient. Indeed, to your Lord is your return. Have you seen the one who prevents and prohibits a servant when he prays? Let me know, have you seen? This is the second part. And this is talking about a story that took place with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And basically, we know of Abu Jahl. So Abu Jahl was one of the 4 main enemies of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And basically what happened is Abu Jahl was getting mad that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was praying at the Kaaba. So he told his friends that the next time I see the Prophet praying at the Kaaba, I am going to prevent him. So I'm not going to allow him to pray there. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, did you see that who prohibits a servant when he prays? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about that he said he was going to prohibit the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from praying. But what happened is, as he came to try to push the Prophet away and to kind of prevent him from praying, he said that he was going to grab the Prophet by his forelock and stuff his face into the dirt to prevent the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from praying. When he got close, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent an angel, and this angel came to protect the Prophet. So Abu Jahl, he was about to grab the Prophet, he saw these really big angels who looked super, super, super scary, and he saw surrounding them like fire. So he got scared and he didn't touch the Prophet. So subhanAllah, just seeing how the Prophet Muhammad, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never is going to forsake even His prophets, never going to forsake the believers, and He actually sent down angels to protect the Prophet. So that's why in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He says, have you seen that he became self-sufficient, as in he was arrogant, Abu Jahl, thinking that he's not going to go back to his Lord, he's not going to be held accountable, and then saying that, did you see the one who prevents him from praying? And this is talking about this story. And so basically then what after is the third part, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, do they not know that Allah sees, so stay away from this. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if he does not stop, we will drag him by his forelock, which is lying and sinning. So in the surah it is أَلَمْ يَعْلَمْ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ يَرَى كَلَّا لَإِن لَمْ يَنْتَهِ لَنَسْفَعًا بِالنَّاصِيَةِ نَاصِيَةٍ كَاذِبَةٍ خَاطِئَةٍ. So this is saying if he does not stop, as in if he does not stop kind of torturing the Prophet or being an enemy basically to the Prophet and harming him, لَنَسْفَعًا بِالنَّاصِيَةِ, that we're going to drag him by his forelock. A forelock which is كَاذِبَةٍ, lying, خَاطِئَةٍ, like it's sinning. And the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replied with this is because Abu Jahl had said that he wanted to drag the Prophet by his forelock. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is replying to him, telling him that He will drag him by his forelock. And we take a little benefit from this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says in the Quran that they will be thrown into the fire and they will be dragged by their forelocks. So you're going to be dragged by the front of your head to the fire. And the reason is because this front area of your head is the part of your brain that is in charge of making decisions. That is basically like your free will. So it's your free will essentially that would lead you to Jahannam, and it's that part of the fire that you will be dragged with into the fire. SubhanAllah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, let him call his associates, we shall call ours. Stay away from this, don't obey him, and prostrate and draw near. So after Abu Jahl got scared away from the angels, he went and kind of rallied up some of his friends to try and harm the Prophet again. Because maybe it was like, oh, just by myself, I'm not going to be able to, defend myself from these angels. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's saying, let him call his associates. We will call, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word sanad'u zabaniya. Zabaniya are the angels who are the gatekeepers of Jahannam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, let him call. We will call the angels that are in charge of throwing people into Jahannam. And then He says, don't obey him, as in He's talking to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, prostrate and draw near. So subhanAllah, the main reason why this surah, I love this surah, like another reason why this surah is really nice, is you look at the story of Abu Jahl and you see right away the protection that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to His messenger. And this protection can be translated to the protection that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows His believers. So Allah, one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names is Al-Wali. Al-Wali is basically a protector. So for example, in Islam, a girl is not allowed to get married unless she has a wali. Her wali would be either her father or her grandpa or her uncle, her brother. Someone has to be her guardian with her when she's like meeting the person and she ends up getting married, out of a form of protection. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran that He is waliyul mu'mineen, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the wali for those who are believers. So understanding that when you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on your side, nothing and no one can harm you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that if He loves a servant, we know that He calls Jibreel and He tells Jibreel to love him and He tells the whole world to love him. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another spot in the Quran, or it might be a hadith, that if someone wages war against one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, like one of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's servants that He loves, then he's waging war against Allah. Like that's just how close and how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, to the point that if someone harms you, it's like they're waging a war against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can see that in the surah with the protection of the Prophet from Abu Jahl. And it is one of the most beautiful things ever, just knowing that whatever you do, as long as you are on the right path, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your wali. He is your guardian and your protector. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that like the wali of the disbelievers is shaitan. So you're going to have a wali. You're going to have this higher being that's guardian. It's either going to be Allah or it's going to be shaitan. So it's upon us, especially during these last 10 nights, especially during the month of Ramadan, to make sure that our wali is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not the shaitan, not our desires and anything else. But that's it for today's episode, and inshallah I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode.